Something's wrong with Google Maps. I'm terrible with directions. It's actually a form of dyslexia, my brain just can't orient itself correctly. My head spins and I lose all sense of direction. I've learned to make do. At night I like to sit down and study any new routes on Google Maps, until they're absolutely committed to memory. It's tedious, yes, but it saves me the unnecessary panic that only ends in me getting hopelessly lost. My niece was just born. I planned on visiting her and my sister in New York, near Albany, all the way from my house in Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania. It's an 8-hour drive, so I had my work cut out for me. I was set to leave in 2 weeks exactly, and had to start preparing as soon as possible. I pulled out Google Maps, and the weirdest thing happened. It said that I was outside, in my backyard, if you could even call it that. It's just a thin strip of grass that bleeds into the woods. I was in my bed, and certainly not in the woods, so I figured it was just acting up. Then, the little blue dot started to turn, and move forward. It was moving along the sides of my house, tracing the perimeter. I refreshed it so many times but it kept saying the same thing. I was getting uneasy. I turned the lights on outside, looked through every window, and saw nothing. I don't know what I expected to happen, but at least I felt better. My heart was still pounding though, and I felt my whole body buzzing with adrenaline. I decided it was best to sleep off my nerves. I made sure my door was locked though. As the world started to drift away, I could have sworn I heard the faint sound of footsteps. You know how your mind plays tricks on you when you're falling asleep. Morning came and I immediately checked the app again, but it reverted back to normal. I was relieved, but it only made me more curious as to what happened last night. I was kicking myself too. I got so worked up that I'd forgotten entirely to prepare for my upcoming trip. I waited patiently for night to fall, and pulled up the app. The dot was back outside, in the same spot as before. This time, as it turned and moved towards my house, it parked itself right outside what I made out to be my room. I rushed to look out the window and I saw something brush past, just in the corner of my eye. It could have easily been an animal, but the pit in my stomach wouldn't let me simply brush it off. I looked at my phone again, and felt my stomach sink even further down. The dot had moved. It was sitting right by my front door. It seemed to wait for a moment, then passed through and went inside. It was all so calculated. I never heard the door open or the alarm sound, but as the dot made its way around my home I could hear the house shift and groan. For 2 hours I waited, paralyzed, until the dot exited the way it came and the noises ceased. 2 hours wasted cowering from an imaginary stalker. I decided to ignore it from now on and start memorizing the route, but after an hour my eyes grew too heavy and I had to call it a night. The sound of footsteps made it hard to fall asleep. The following days only got worse. I heard footsteps all the time. When they started I could just barely hear them, but they became deafening and all-consuming. Wherever I saw the little blue dot, a creak of the wood or a brushing against the grass would follow. I could feel my mind starting to slip with each sleepless night. I tried having a friend stay the night in my spare room. In the morning he asked me why I got up so many times overnight. I knew I hadn't. He said that if I kept being so noisy he wouldn't do this again, so that was that. I even called the police, but they weren't any help. They took a look around and found nothing. As they left they told me to get some rest. I wish that were possible, I thought. Most of my time was either spent in a desperate attempt to sleep, or hunched over at my desk, obsessively tracing and retracing over the way to New York. I started looking forward to my trip. I thought that maybe once I got out of the house, this would all be over. The day of my long-awaited trip finally came. I was exhausted, but I didn't care anymore. I had to get out of there, even if it was just for a few days. I'd never been more sure about a set of directions in my life. I had every landmark, every street name, every shop I would pass memorized. The car started, and with each passing second I felt closer to freedom. I turned right, continued forward, then left. I should have just passed a country store. That can't be right. I did everything correctly, I was so sure. The world started spinning like it always does when I don't know where to go, but this was different. I knew where to go, but the world was wrong. I checked Google Maps and it said I was in the forest, closer to New York. I decided I would trust my gut and continue on. Anywhere was better than in that house. It all went wrong though. Nothing was as it should have been. Where I should have passed gas stations and diners, I only found a denser and denser forest. The suburban streets turned into what was merely a dirt path in the woods. It twisted and turned. I was so tired, my hands wouldn't keep up. Then, everything started to spin. I was weightless for a moment, then felt a jolt as I hit the steering wheel. Everything went black. As my eyes began to open, I stumbled out of the wrecked car and looked to where I had come from. I didn't see a road anymore. Was that even the same way I came? Despite my delirium, I had been lost before. I knew that when you get lost in the woods, you stay put until somebody finds you. I did just that. By some miracle, I had cell service. Slumped against the tree uprooted by my car, I phoned everyone I could think of. Not even 911 picked up. The internet was working fine though. I could see everything my friends were posting on social media, but every message, comment, and post I made begging to be rescued went ignored. I looked up from my phone and stared into the endless formation of trees stretching on for infinity in every direction. I got dizzy for a moment. I looked at Google Maps. You have arrived at your destination, it said. For hours I waited, staring into the ever-darkening wilderness, until no light remained. I checked one last time. I don't know why, it couldn't have saved me, nothing can. The dot had moved. It said my location was at the motel by my sister's house, the very one I planned on staying in. Then, my phone buzzed. I got a message. Today was so much fun, followed by a photo of me, smiling, holding my newborn niece. This is my last attempt to reach somebody. If you're reading this, I don't know where I am. I haven't for the longest time, and I don't know if I ever will again. If you see a man with my face, that is not me. I am in the woods, please find me.